Hey, good morning. Beautiful day indeed. What a difference a day makes, right? My goodness. If you're out here on the east coast of the U.S., it is just a beautiful fall morning. The clouds and rain have departed, and we're in a wonderful, good looking day. Hope everything's well where you are. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. It is really an honor that you would take time out of your busy schedule to just hang out with little old me. But it is good. It's wonderful that we get to, this is, I guess you'd call this virtual fellowship. It's not quite as good as, in person. But at least it's there, and it's quite an accomplishment when you think about it, the fact that we can be all over the world and yet gather together at the same time to share things, share thoughts, and it is just an amazing thing. So good morning to all of you guys. Wow, we got a bunch of you already jumping in here. Joanne and Jackie, Jane and Susan and Kathy out there in Hawaii. My goodness. Bernadette, Joanne number two, Patty, Norma Jean. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much. Good to have you along. So we're in John chapter 10. And yesterday really did a kind of a deep dive into this this thief that is doing nothing but robbing so many of us, stealing so many of us of what the Lord has always intended for us to have. And so Jesus is, now going to contrast himself with these thieves, these robbers who in his time were largely, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, these high priests, and all of the religious elite of his day, who he says, and we'll cover this at some point, he talks about how they, tie up heavy loads on people's backs and won't lift a finger to help them. And that's really what all of their rules and regulations did. It just made it impossible to really serve God. So, and plus, well, we're going to get into this right here in verse 11. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hireling and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, beholds the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hireling and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. And I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep which are not of this fold, and I must bring them also. And they shall hear my voice, and they shall become one flock with one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it again. No one takes it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This commandment I received from my Father. Wow. I mean, there's just some really deep stuff here that we need to understand, we need to look at, because not only does it help us to understand how we are to exercise discernment with respect to those that would want us to connect with them and be part of what they're doing, but it also, I guess, in all these things, right, we're learning how we are called to be Christ-like in these ways as well. So it's always that twofold thing, right? We look at what Jesus did to learn from his example, realizing that we're now able to do these exact same things because we're one with him. So, he says here that a good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And that's true. They realized that a shepherd and his flock, the flock was his livelihood. It was his business. It was everything. It was his sustenance. It was his success. It was his measure of wealth and the ability to provide for himself, and if he was married, his family, right? So yeah, he he would do everything in his power to make sure that those sheep were well cared for, were protected. And Jesus, of course, the ultimate example of this principle of being willing to lay down his life for the benefit of those whom he is providing for and protecting. Powerful principle. And it works out, in our lives in different ways than exactly how he did it. And we'll look at that in just a minute. But he then goes into talking about this idea of a hireling. Whew, boy. There is just a whole pile of stuff right here. Okay. He's contrasting a hireling to an actual shepherd. Now, shepherds could get to a point where their flocks were so huge they needed help. So they would hire people. They would say, hey, you need work. I need somebody to help me keep track of all these sheep, make sure they're good, whatever. So the person that was brought in, obviously, as a employee of the shepherd, Jesus calls that person a hireling. Now, the job itself is honorable, right? I want to make that clear. He is not saying that, getting a job in any context, any legal context, make that clear. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But here's what he's pointing out about the hireling in this particular instance. He says the hireling is not the owner of the sheep. In other words, he has no ownership value in these sheep. In other words, well, you hired me to watch these sheep and I'm going to do my job. All right? I'm going to do my job because you hired me to do a job. And the job is not equivalent to ownership. Now, ownership as a concept, and you got to get this, there's literal ownership, which is in view here, right? Jesus is talking about how a shepherd owns his sheep, right? And so therefore, he's going to lay his life down because these are my sheep, this is my business, this is my livelihood, right? But ownership is also a virtual or value kind of a proposition. What do I mean by that? So you're working for someone, right? You've been hired to do a job, and you're doing the job. You can look at the job as just a job, as, okay, here's my job description, I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow this thing, and that's it, because I'm doing my job. Or you can take on an ownership mentality, an ownership value. Well, what does that mean? That means that you do your job as if you were the owner. In other words, you decide, I am going to treat this position, this work that I'm doing, as if it was my own business, right? I own this, and therefore I absolutely want nothing but the best because I am, treating this as if I own it. See, that's a level of ownership that we all can do. It's a level of leadership, really, that though I may not have any specific title, right? I am treating this position as if this was my business, I own it, and my reputation is on the line as the owner, so-called, of this particular area. And having that kind of a mentality is is a guarantee that you're going to be successful on some level, because you will take steps to do things that someone who is just a hireling is not going to do. Because, well, that's not my job. That's not part of my job. I'm not doing that. But yet, if you were the owner, you would look at that and go, yeah, okay, so I'm really not supposed to do this, or I really don't have to do this, right? But I'm going to do it because it's important if this is going to be a successful business, right? So huge difference in perspective. And so Jesus here is talking about this hireling who is just, a worker, doesn't care about anything other than what he was assigned to do and make sure you give me my paycheck at the end of the week, all right? And because of that, when something bad happens or something that requires going beyond the job description, well, in this case, I'm out, right? What Jesus says, the wolf comes, he leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf is just having lunch and dinner and breakfast all rolled into one, right? Why? Because this person is a hireling. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting. Because the hireling concept of just simply, I'm here to do what matters to me, right? Which is, I do what I'm hired to do and I get my paycheck. That mentality has made its way into the church, as well as, obviously, in so-called secular arenas. And when that happens, well, you've got people in ministry who are doing ministry for their personal gain, for what's good for them, and not what's good for the sheep or for fulfilling what the Lord wants. All right, it's all about their ministry. They're promoting who they are and what they do, creating this kind of empire of followers, that are following them more than they're actually following the Lord, right? So this hireling concept is extremely dangerous, yet sadly, it's pretty prevalent in many areas of the church. And we've got to be aware of that, because folks who are functioning in that mode, in that kind of ministry, are absolutely not in step with the heart of the Father. They're not in step with the heart of the Good Shepherd, who said, I'm laying down my life for the sheep, right? And obviously, Jesus can say that I know my own and my own know me, because he is the head, right? He is the one who is Lord over the church and over the sheep, right? I can't say that, and neither can you. We don't own anybody, but yet we can take on an ownership mentality from the standpoint that says, you know what? I'm going to take responsibility for whatever it is that I have to do in order to help people grow and get free of whatever it is that's been holding them back, right? Whereas again, this idea for a hireling, it's interesting. In Philippians 2, Paul writes this: fulfill my joy that you be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, one mind. Let nothing be done through strife or vain glory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves. Whew. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. When he says that let nothing be done through strife or vain glory, that's the kind of person who's trying to just keep all the attention, the focus on themselves, right? And the word strife actually comes from the same root word that we see here in John 10 for hireling. It's amazing. And so this idea in the Greek times, this word referred to self-serving ambition going after political office, electioneering, seeking to win followers. I mean, wow. It really made me stop and think, is that what I'm doing on Facebook? Just trying to, or Twitter, because those are platforms where, you want to increase followers and friends and all these sorts of things, right? All the social media stuff. It really starts to make you wonder about some of these things, so believe me, I'm reassessing stuff myself as I look at this again. Let me take a break for a minute here, and again, just say that our broadcast today is brought to you by Jesus Book and Gift. My good friend Joe Catalano there in Island, New Jersey, Route 1 South. They've got an amazing selection of all kinds of books, music, study materials, home decor, supplies for church and Sunday school. You name it, they've got it. And if they don't, they'll get it for you. So stop by, have a free cup of coffee, and check it out. Route 1 South in Island. They're open every day. I think it's 10 to 9, and then Sundays from 12 to 5. All right. So this idea of a hireling as opposed to a good shepherd is really talking about someone that doesn't view their role from the kind of servant-hearted perspective that Jesus has, right? He clearly is all about what's best for you and I. And, what that means in essence is that the shepherd, in those days would lead the flock where they needed to go to get, their food, their sustenance, the water that they needed. And that would mean leading them away from places that weren't good. It would be irresponsible for the shepherd to allow the sheep to go grazing in places where there were thorns and thistles and maybe poisonous plants. It just wouldn't be good. So having that kind of a servant-hearted mentality that is concerned for people and in that love relationship that we have with folks, to be able to go and say, hey, let's talk. I mean, I'm a little concerned. Tell me about this, or tell me what's going on in your life. That is so huge. That's what Jesus is talking about. That, I lay down my life for the sheep, which means I'm not going to simply let the sheep do what they want to do, but even if it means that I kind of tick them off a little, it's like they may not want to move from one place to another, but I have to lead them to where the pasture is the best, right? And so that kind of a perspective where it's like, wow, do I risk creating, an issue with somebody because I really do care about them? Now, I'm not going to come in blazing guns and being judgmental and critical over people, but rather have that heart of love toward them that expresses concern, and say, hey, could we talk about this? And then if they get upset, okay, that wasn't my goal. I just wanted to share with you what I've learned. Right? That's the huge thing. We come in humbly and say, I've learned some things, and could I share them with you? And having that kind of a relationship. But see, that's the key. In the kingdom, everything is predicated on relationship, right? When the Lord brings revelation to us, it's meant to be shared, in the context of our relationships in the body of Christ. And if there are issues that need to be worked out in our relationships, well, we've got to do that, because everything in the kingdom is based on relationship. And so having this shepherd's heart, as Jesus did, where we do take responsibility for one another. Again, not from a standpoint of controlling, trying to make people do things or do what we want. I mean, my goodness, if you haven't learned by now that that is absolutely illegal in the kingdom, we have no authority over anybody. Any authority that I have is simply favor that I have with someone where they give me the right to speak into their life. I mean, even those who have so-called positions in the church, that position does not confer a positional authority on them where they get to tell people what to do. I'm sorry, it doesn't. Jesus made it very clear that in his kingdom, greatness is measured by servanthood. You want to be great? You must serve. You must come under people and lift them up, empowering them. You don't lord it over as the Gentiles do. He made that completely illegal. So in all of our relationships with one another, if we're going to take on this good shepherd heart for people, we have to enter into relationships with people as serving them, as being there for them, as wanting to impart whatever wisdom we may have learned, but within the context of that relationship. As I've mentioned to you before, we typically want to try to fix people when we see problems in their lives. That's not our job. It's not my job to fix you. It's your job to hear from the Lord and to obey whatever it is he's showing you. So that means my job is to hear from the Lord about what he's saying to you and to come into agreement with that and partner with the Lord concerning what he's actually dealing with you about. And how do I do that? Conversation, questions, right? You don't come in there with, okay, I see your problem. Here's the 7 steps to fix it. Now, if you have 7 steps to fix problems that the Lord's given you, that's great. And you can certainly let people know, hey, God gave me this awesome thing. And if you're dealing with this issue, I think I can help you, blah, blah, blah. But not in the context of relationship. No way, right? You got to get permission from somebody before you lay things like that on them. So laying down our lives for sheep, for one another, means that I'm going to stay in a place of support, of connection with you, and where I become aware of what's going on in your life and how I possibly could help you overcome a problem if that, if you wanted that. All right. And if you don't, no problem. I'm not going to get offended or insulted. It's just, yeah, okay, no big deal. I'll keep praying for you and we can continue to talk and we'll just kind of see how things go. So sometimes we all have to learn kind of the hard way, right? We try stuff and it doesn't work and we end up getting hurt or having something fail that we thought we had it all figured out, right? Sometimes that's what happens. And so, but we support one another. There's no judgment. There's no criticism. We're all learning together, right? And if you make a mistake, if I make a mistake, it's usually because there's some issue in my life that hasn't gotten straightened out yet, and it motivated a bad decision on my part, right? So the issue is not, it's not the mistake. It's what's behind it, right? What was going on there, that led you to think that was a good thing to do? Why did you think that was a good idea? And again, you don't do it from a judgmental perspective. It's like, let's explore this thing. You've realized that something didn't work here for you, right? Okay, so let's figure out, well, why did you even go that way? That's how this works. That's what it means to lay down your life. And I love here Jesus says, I lay it down on my own initiative. Not even the Father God required Jesus to do this. He said, my son, here's the problem. And the only solution that we have is for you to willingly lay down your life for these sheep. And Jesus said, absolutely, I'm there. But it was Jesus' choice to do that. He wasn't forced into this thing. He made a decision to do what was right. And that's what we can do. We absolutely can make a decision to say, you know what? I'm laying down my life. I'm laying down my agenda. What I think, ought to happen here. Because I really want to know what he's up to, so I can come into agreement with that and partner with that. And maybe I'll be in a position to help somebody with whatever they're struggling with. See, that's a hugely different kind of an approach than the hireling who does come in with, hey, I'm the man of faith and power for the hour, and I have all the answers. I'm the anointed one, and you need to listen to me. You need to become part of my ministry. You need to, tithe and whatever else, into this thing so that you can be blessed. That's the voice of a hireling. All right. And so you're going to need to be discerning concerning the people that you are connecting with or are connected to really see whether or not their approach to your growth and your development is in line with the kind of leadership that Jesus described in this New Testament. Leaders who are willing to lay down their lives for people and come under them, not to dictate, not to control, but rather to empower and impart. That's so huge. And so I hope this is helpful for you, whether you are, in a place where you are needing this sort of leadership in your life, or whether you're in a place where you are a leader in some way or having influence in people's lives. This truth, this reality is so, so important if we're going to be effective in helping people to get free and to grow and mature into sons and daughters. So I hope that's helpful for you. I know it's a lot, but sometimes it is. That's what can I say. Oh, let me say good morning to you guys. Let's see who else jumped in here today after I started gabbing. Marcos, John, Marie, hey, how are you? Jennifer, good afternoon. Ted there in Germany. Ralph and Rosa, Maria, Keith, and Lisa. Great. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate having you along here on the live stream. Thank you for sharing the video with your friends. Truly appreciate that. And as always, reach out if you'd like to chat. We can set up a phone call if that would be helpful for you, or just send me an email or a Facebook message and let's talk. All right. Have an awesome weekend. Boy, I hope you have a chance to really love on somebody really good and help them experience this amazing Papa that we have. Look forward to being back with you on Monday, 8:30 Eastern. All right. Till then, you are blessed. Now go bless. All right. Talk to you then.